The hardest thing for a father is to close his son's eyes forever. But there's something worse, knowing who killed him and not being able to do anything about it.
My name is Frank Dalton.
I am 67 years old. I served in the U.S. Marine Corps for 20 years. I fought in Vietnam, in Iraq, and then in the silence within me. My wife Mary and I were married for 43 years. When she passed away, my son Eddie became my sole support. My son was a legal warrior. He lived for justice, and that's why he died. It was 1:45 a.m. The house was quiet. The phone rang. There are some sounds that you hear once, and never forget. That night, that sound was the moment when everything ended. Mr. Dalton, your son Eddie Dalton, was shot tonight. At that moment, my heart stopped beating. My tongue stuck to the roof of my mouth. No matter how much I asked, they wouldn't say anything. They only said, "It happened during a robbery." But my son's watch was still on his wrist. His wallet was in his pocket. His keys, his ring, even the pin on his tie. Nothing had been touched. Only one thing was missing. The folder in his bag. That folder. Clearly something no one should have gotten their hands on. Eddie was burying someone or some people with that file, and someone found out and silenced him. That night I went to the morgue. I clenched my teeth as I looked at his body. There was a bullet wound on my son's forehead, a clean, cold-blooded execution. This wasn't a robbery. This was a message. When I got home, the first thing I did was turn on his computer. I found a locked folder, hidden, encrypted, protected. I stayed up for 5 nights straight. Finally, I managed to open it. It mentioned a man named Richard Malden, the CEO of a large company, a snake presented as a success story in newspaper headlines. The documents in the folder contained evidence of corruption, money laundering, manipulation of election donations, fake tax deductions, missing contracts, and audio recordings. It was Richard's own voice. "If this file comes out, I'm finished." Eddie had caught him, and he was preparing to speak. There was one more document in the folder, an unfinished statement. The title was ready, Declaration Edward Dalton, but there was no signature below it. It was clear that despite the fear he was trying to suppress, he was going to come forward with this file, but he didn't even get the chance. I realized that my son had been killed not by a bullet, but because he had threatened justice. And that night, I made a promise to myself. I can't bring my son back, but those who silenced him, I will silence them, and nothing would ever be the same again. That night, I sat in front of my son's computer screen for hours, not in anger, in cold silence, because I buried my anger on the battlefield. Now it was time to wait, watch, and then strike. The first rule was to know the enemy. Richard Malden. He was a stock market tycoon, deeply involved in politics, a visionary praised in the media. But in the documents, there was another side to him. I was going to expose that side. The next morning, I opened a notebook. At the top of the page, I wrote a single word: patience. What I wrote below was a battle plan. Where is he located? Who does he meet with? Who is his weak link? His family, employees, former enemies. I identified them one by one. The first step was to obtain information from within the company. I chose a quiet, inconspicuous target. I found a former military man working in the accounting department. We had a shared military background. When our eyes met, he understood everything. 2 weeks later, he gave me copies of the secret bank transfers. I had my first piece of evidence. Then I hired a private detective. I paid in cash, leaving no trace. I said, "You will follow this man for a year. Where does he get his morning coffee? Who does he talk to at night? Which street does he walk down with fear in his eyes?" I want it all. And he delivered. He returned with a full folder. I memorized Richard's habits. Every Friday afternoon, he was alone in the office. That day, I placed a device disguised as a business card. I started recording the sounds. A week later, I caught this sentence: "If Eddie reveals the file, everything we have will go up in smoke." That's when I made my decision. I would bring justice not to the courtroom, but to the living room. I would be in the same place at the same time, at the same eye level as him. My plan was clear. I would gather the documents. I would archive the audio recordings. I would finalize my son's statement. The signature was missing, but I would read those words on his behalf. What would I do next? I would wait, just like I did in Vietnam, silent, motionless, but ready to pull the trigger at any moment. Because sometimes wars don't make a sound. They only begin when you lock eyes. And once they begin, there's no turning back. I kept quiet for 5 months. I didn't speak. I just prepared. And finally, the day arrived. It was the company's 40th anniversary. Richard Malden was going to face the press. A large hall had been reserved. There was a guest list of 200 people. Investors, politicians, media, they were all there. They had gathered to applaud how successful he was. But this time, I would be the one to open the curtain. The day before the event, I went to the hall. I had an old friendship with someone from the security company. That night, a USB drive was placed under each chair. The drives contained Eddie's completed statement, audio recordings, bank transfers, dates, times, names. Everything was there. The presentation began. Richard took the stage. The cameras were rolling. He was smiling. At that moment, an image appeared on the giant screen in the hall. Eddie's voice echoed, "I am Edward Dalton. I prepared this statement of my own free will. I have documents about Richard Malden." The hall fell silent. People turned and looked at each other. Richard's face turned pale. His smile froze. He wanted to leave immediately, but it was too late. FBI agents were at the entrance. The documents had been with them for a year. They were just waiting for me to press the button. My son's name was etched into everyone's memory that night. And Richard Malden, he was arrested in the middle of applause. I didn't say a word. I just leaned against the door and watched. "Like Eddie," I spoke with my eyes. That night I went to my son's grave. And I left a small note. "This war started with you, but I ended it. If this story affected you, write what you felt in the comments. What would you do in such a situation? Would you stay silent or would you seek justice?" And for more realistic revenge stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because some stories are not just told, they are lived.